So, it finally happened. After waiting for way longer than we had originally hoped, we finally got a new trailer for Final Fantasy XVI, and as per usual, the Final Fantasy community seems hell-bent on making the most of it, not leaving any stone left unturned. In this video, we'll be doing our part by comparing the Japanese and the English versions of the new trailer by featuring the official English subtitles at the top, the official Japanese subtitles below that, and then at the very bottom, we will have a more direct translation of the Japanese dialogue. We'll start off just by playing the trailer with all the subtitles, so that you can see it all in action, and then we'll end the video with a discussion of some interesting parts. But anyway, I'm Nokwi from Birds of Play, and if you end up liking the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that we can wait for the release of Final Fantasy XVI together. On with the trailer, I'll see you on the other side.
この力は人の身には余るもの。神の力は強大だ。わずかに行使するだけで体を蝕んでいく。そして召喚獣と呼ばれる存在、人ならざるものになってしまう。それが我らドミナント。
また戦が始まるのね。
全てが起こってからでは遅いのだ。早急に動かねば。
奴を止めなければさらなる混沌が訪れるだろう。
だからドミナントを抑える。力を持つ者を集め、マザークリスタルのもとに新たな秩序を築く。
俺が出れば奴らもドミナントを出してくる。召喚獣合戦だ。 多少の損害など捨ておけ。人が死ぬなら産めばよい。建屋が燃えれば建てればよい。簡単なことではないか。
目覚めよ、因果の子。目覚めよ、イフリート。
That's a pretty nice trailer, right? So the first thing that struck me in terms of differences between the Japanese and the English version is an emphasis on different terminology. The opening monologue in the English version stressing the importance of the Eikons, while the Japanese version is more concerned with the dominance. It's not something I imagine being very important though, since the Japanese version also seems to hold the Eikons in high regard, referring to their power as the power of the gods or the kami, which to me implies that the status of these summons might be similar to that of the astrals in Final Fantasy XV, in terms of them being considered part of a divine order of some sort. Also, I might be mistaken, but I think this might be the first time we hear the Eikons being referred to as godly. Moving on to my next point. In this scene here, the English version is more explicit, noting that the person they are talking about, this harbinger of chaos, is male, while the Japanese yatse is a more gender-neutral term. I don't know who they are talking about, but at least we know it's a guy. So maybe it's Hugo, the new guy, or someone else? What do you think? Moving on to the scene that everyone thinks is alluding to some sort of sex scene in the game, we have some interesting Japanese-English differences that make it interesting for yet another reason. So in the English version, they just talk about uniting the dominants to bring an end to the strife. But in the Japanese version, they talk about gathering those whose powers can suppress the dominants. Judging by the interplay of these two lines, I imagine that the only ones capable of suppressing dominance are other dominants, but the Japanese still seems to give us a little bit more insight into the status of the dominants, telling us that some think they must be suppressed. The follow-up to that line is also a bit different, since the Japanese version explicitly mentions the Mother Crystal. So even though there are those who would seek to suppress the dominants, they still seem to respect the power of the Mother Crystal in some way, even though I wouldn't be surprised if their plan was to corrupt it in some way. Who knows? Who knows? Lastly, I want to mention this line at the very end of the trailer, which I find very interesting. So instead of saying something like Unmei no ko, which would translate as child of fate, the Japanese version calls Clive Inga no ko, or the child of cause and effect. To me, this seems to point to Clive being sort of thrust into his role, not by some sort of universal fate, but rather by virtue of someone or something having upset the balance or the natural order of things. Well, that's all for today. What did you think of the trailer and the differences between the Japanese and the English version? Don't forget to tell us down in the comments below, and subscribe to the channel as we continue waiting for Final Fantasy XVI to drop, and also do some other Final Fantasy stuff. Until next time, cuckoo!